The best thing about the Harry Potter world is that it's not just all magical chocolate frogs and butterbeer. Beneath the charm and whimsy lies a dangerous world that's as scary as it is fascinating. And that's mostly thanks to some absolutely bonkers wizards and their even more unhinged spells. Spells make the wizard, sure, but what happens when magic gets so wild it could rewrite the rules of reality? Let's find out, shall we? I hope you have your wand within reach, because this is gonna be a wild ride. Oh, but wait, before we get into the video, we'd love your support. If you're enjoying this dive into the darker side of magic in the Harry Potter world, swish and flick that subscribe button so we can keep bringing you the best Harry Potter news, stories, and theories, and don't forget to jab that like and scribble a comment. We'd love to know which spells that you think are the most dangerous and what you'd like us to cover next. Number 10. Legilimency spell, Legilimens. A spell doesn't need to blow things up to be terrifying, and the wizarding world definitely attests to that. One such spell, which was essentially a precursor to many important moments in the Harry Potter series, is the Legilimens spell. It's the art of diving into someone's mind and exploring everything in there. And by everything, I mean everything. The caster of the spell was given the ability to not only see the victim's memories, but also their thoughts and their entire spectrum of emotions. Now, imagine a spell that invasive falling into the wrong hands. It's no wonder the Dark Lord took pleasure in invading the mind. Now, the origins of this spell are a little gray, but we know it's ancient. Salazar Slytherin himself was a skilled Legilimens and was also probably not the most fun guy to hang out with. In the series, Snape uses this spell on Harry several times, and if that wasn't enough, he made sure to drill into Harry's head, pun fully intended, how critical it was to block it, delivering one of his classic Snape speeches.
Then you will find yourself easy prey for the Dark Lord. Fools who wear their hearts proudly on their sleeves, who cannot control their emotions, who wallow in sad memories and allow themselves to be provoked easily. Weak people, in other words. They stand no chance against his powers. He will penetrate your mind with absurd ease, Potter.
Honestly, if Legilimency teaches us anything, it's that sometimes the scariest magic doesn't explode or make a person go up in flames. It just quietly messes with your head while judging your life choices. Number 9. The Unbreakable Vow. Incantation unknown. Anything that puts a person in a literal life and death situation is dangerous, that's for sure. The Unbreakable Vow is a spell that completely puts one's life at the whim of being able to succeed at a particular task, no matter how impossible it is. Now, while the spell is a two-sided thing, where it can only be activated if both sides agree, it's still a life-binding spell with one pretty consistent outcome. The vow breaker ends up dead. Now, you probably know where this is going. The single most hated and the most emotionally charged scene in the series? Yep, where Snape is basically forced to kill Dumbledore? Yeah, that was all because of an unbreakable vow. Snape had promised Narcissa Malfoy, Draco's mom, for those needing refresher, that he'd protect Draco and help him survive Voldemort, even if it meant doing the unthinkable. With how the events turned out, we all know Snape went through with it, becoming both a hero and a villain in the process. There's not much information about the origins of this spell either. We don't know if it requires incantations or just a particularly determined handshake. However, we do get a glimpse of its terrifying implications when the Weasley twins try to trick Ron into making one. However, with how their father reacts to it, there is no doubt that this spell is as dangerous as they come. Number 8. Taboo. Possibly the most iconic line from the Harry Potter series that still gets quoted everywhere is, "He who must not be named." While it started as a symbolic nod to Voldemort's terrifying reputation, things got a lot more literal during the Second Wizarding War. Voldemort, always the drama king, went ahead and jinxed his own name in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Each time someone said it out loud, Death Eaters could instantly locate them. And, well, we all know how that one ended up for most people. For Voldemort, it wasn't just an ego thing. Though, let's be honest, that was probably part of it. The real aim was to target the Order of the Phoenix, the only group bold or stubborn enough to say his name out loud. By baiting them into using it, he could track their location and send his Death Eaters straight to them. The Jinx itself wasn't inherently deadly, more like a darker version of the Trace, but it was the cruel intent behind it that made it so dangerous. And since there is virtually no history revolving around the name Taboo Jinx, having only appeared in the endgame, it's safe to assume that it was the Dark Lord himself who actually came up with it. Number 7. Imperious Curse, Imperio. Some spells in the wizarding world are labeled as dangerous, but then there are the ones so inherently evil, they've become outright forbidden by the Ministry of Magic. The 3 unforgivable curses, as most fans know, are spells that carry the harshest penalty. You perform even one, and you're looking at a one-way ticket to Azkaban. And honestly, with how terrifying they are, that's entirely fair. The least dangerous of the 3, and that's saying a lot, is the Imperious Curse. With a simple Imperio, a caster gains complete control over their victim, and by full control, I mean getting these people to do anything, even murder, at the whims of the caster. Breaking free of the curse isn't easy. You need a strong will to fight it off, or you'd have to hope for the person casting it to either let go of the spell or get taken out. With Death Eaters and the Dark Lord involved, the latter option wasn't exactly viable for most people. The origins of this curse trace back to the Middle Ages, though who first came up with it remains a mystery. Some do say it was made by Ignotus Peveril, one of the 3 brothers potentially featured in the Tale of the 3 Brothers. Number 6. The Cruciatus Curse, Crucio. If there's one curse in the wizarding world that truly defines physical pain like no other, it's the Cruciatus Curse. After being used on Harry, the books describe it as pain beyond anything. His very bones were on fire. His head was surely splitting along his scar. He wanted it to end, to black out, to die. This curse or spell is no joke. It's one of the 3 unforgivable curses, and unlike the other 2, it was specifically designed for torture. While the Imperious Curse can be resisted with a strong will, there's no real escape for the Cruciatus Curse, unless the caster decides to stop. Something one should not expect when their enemies are the Dark Lord's lackeys. The pain inflicted by the curse is so intense that it can drive the victim to complete insanity if endured for too long. One of the most tragic examples of this is the fate of Neville Longbottom's parents, Frank and Alice. During the First Wizarding War, they were tortured by 4 Death Eaters using the Cruciatus Curse. The agony they suffered was so severe that it permanently destroyed both of their bodies and minds. To this day, they've not recovered and probably never will. Like the Imperious Curse, this one was also formed in the Middle Ages with no explicit mentions of its maker, although one candidate could be Cadmus Peveril of the Peveril brothers. Number 5. Sectum Sepra.
You dare use my own spells against me, Potter.
This iconic line was thrown at Harry Potter by Severus Snape when Harry tried to use Sectum Sepra on him. Now, Sectum Sepra might not sound as flashy as some of the other dark spells on the list, but it's an absolutely excruciating offensive curse. Essentially, it summons an invisible sword that slashes enemies from a distance, causing very deep slashes across their body. While the idea of an invisible sword might seem less dangerous than, say, the Killing Curse, the effect it has on the victim's body are nothing to sneeze at. The slashing from the spell causes deep, gaping wounds across the body, often multiple times and in multiple places. It's a lovely way to bleed out until you eventually succumb to your injuries. Definitely not the sort of exit anyone would wish for. Snape was the one who made this spell, and was also the person who stopped Harry from casting it on Draco. Harry didn't know what its implications were, and simply did it as a joke. Thankfully, Snape intervened in time, saving Draco from his ultimate demise. Number 4. The Killing Curse. Avada Kadavra. Avada Kadavra is undoubtedly the most potent and the most dangerous spell of the 3 unforgivable curses. While the other 2 do not cause imminent death, this one definitely does. The worst part is, there is technically no way to avoid it since it's categorized as an unblockable curse that renders shield spells completely ineffective. The one defense is to physically dodge it. By considering how fast it moves, that's easier said than done. The one thing about the killing curse that somehow adds to how unnerving it actually is the fact that its target is instantly killed on impact. There's no pain, no injury, no suffering, just a sudden drop, and they're gone. Just a cruel, silent end. In theory, this might sound almost merciful, but again, when something like this falls into the wrong hands, the outcomes are devastating. When you think about it, the curse's real danger isn't just the death it causes, it's in how clean it is. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just a lifeless body with no trace of what happened. It can be used to remove threats without anyone ever finding out just who did it. And isn't that the reoccurring theme in the whole series? Oh, and continuing on the theme of the previous unforgivable curses, this one too was likely created in the Middle Ages. With no record of who first came up with it, like the other two, there is a strong possibility that it was crafted by none other than Antioch Peveril, the eldest of the three Peveril brothers. Number 3. Proto Diabolica. To really measure how strong a defensive spell is, you gotta pit it against some seriously offensive magic. But there's one defensive spell in the entire series that's not just strong. It's maliciously stronger than most offensive spells out there. And it doesn't just protect its caster from enemies, it actively flexes its power by getting rid of them completely. I'm talking about the Dark Charm, Proto Diabolica, cast by Gellert Grindelwald in the Lestrange Mausoleum. On the account of Grindelwald casting this spell on the building, it not only protects the caster from external threats and spells, but also actively picks their enemies to incinerate them. The spell takes the form of this black and blue fire that completely surrounds the caster and attacks anyone who dares to cross it. But that's not all. The caster can actively pick and choose who they want to eliminate. When that's done, the fire, in the shape of a bird-like creature, attacks the people its caster deems untrustworthy. So, the spell works as both offensive and defensive magic. Its destructive capabilities are so massive that, if not extinguished completely, it can burn an entire city to the ground. Number 2. Fiend Fire, Pestis Incendium. If there's a spell out there with the unfathomable abilities to destroy a Horcrux, you best believe it's not something to be taken lightly. In the words of Hermione Granger, Fiend Fire, Cursed Fire, it's one of the substances that destroys Horcruxes, but I would never ever have dared use it, it's so dangerous. Some compare Fiend Fire to Proto Diabolica, pertaining to how similar their conjured apparitions look, but Fiend Fire is far more destructive. What Hermione means by cursed fire is the fact that the fire casted in this spell is inextinguishable. It's basically eternally burning and literally destroys everything in its path, indiscriminately. When cast, the fire instantly takes the shape of some sort of mythical beast, phoenix, serpents, dragons, and whatnot, with almost its own sentience. Even the most skilled wizards cannot control it. Seeing that it has a mind of its own, they, therefore, don't even try to conjure it. That's exactly what Hermione meant when she said she wouldn't dare to use it. If I'm gonna put it in simple words though, you can say that casting this spell conjures a fire demon that has a knack for wanting to burn the entire world to the ground. Number 1. The Horcrux making spell. Perhaps everything that has happened in the Harry Potter universe traces back to this one unknown spell. The Horcrux making spell has been shrouded in mystery, but is undoubtedly the most evil and dreadful spell in the history of the wizarding world. It's basically that one spell that's used to bind the caster's soul fragment to an object in order to preserve their immortality. But here's the thing, it's not the spell itself that's the real danger, it's the horrifying act that precedes it. We all know that creating a Horcrux requires murder. The only way to split a soul and bind it to an object is by taking a life. As Horace Slughorn chillingly explains when questioned about the process by none other than the man who would go on to do it 6 times.
By an act of evil, the supreme act of evil, by committing murder. Killing rips the soul apart
This quote underscores just how heinous the spell and its process really are. While Voldemort is the only wizard infamous enough to have made multiple Horcruxes, the origins of this dark magic trace back even further. Herpo the Foul is believed to have been the first dark wizard to perform the spell, and perhaps even its creator. Regardless, it's a spell born of murder, fueled by destruction, and remembered as the ultimate signature of true, unrelenting darkness. Magic is a double-edged sword. It can heal, protect, and inspire, but it's also, unfortunately, been excessively used to harm and control. As these spells prove, it's not just the magic itself that's dangerous, it's how people choose to use it.